Hey guys, Rachele here with Amethyst Ascension. And today the topic that I wanted to discuss was aliens. I know this is probably a bit of a controversial subject. And, some people believe that they exist and some people believe that they don't. And that's okay. I just want to talk about it from my point of view, of course, and my perspective, but just pretty much my beliefs on it. And I would love to see if this creates discussion. This has always been one of the topics that has been discussed, hi baby, in my family and with my friends, whether it's a topic that I bring up because I want to know what people think. I think I have to pause this. Okay, I'm back. So, as I was saying, whether it's a topic that I bring up because I just want to know what people think, because, it's a huge topic, right? Actually knowing whether or not, I'm just going to get into the information that I have and share it with you. And I hope maybe that you do your own video in response, telling me your views on it. That's the whole purpose of this, getting your views, or you leave a comment down below letting me know, yes or no, and why you believe what you do. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, for me, even before many different shows came out, like Ancient Aliens and other things like that, I always believed in aliens. From the time I was really little, from the time that I can remember, the earliest times, we would have discussions because my mom's from a really big family and all of her brothers and sisters would get around, and then their kids. It was always a huge fiasco, and everybody had loud mouths like me. So I'm sure you can only imagine. Sometimes when I'm talking with my daughter, she'll go, "Gosh, do you got to yell?" And I'm like, "I'm not yelling. I'm just talking louder." In order to even be heard in my family, you had to speak a little bit louder. So, I come off as really boisterous. Plus, I have a voice that carries. But anyways, way off topic. Sorry. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was ancient civilizations. For instance, I got into this topic, touched on this topic with the beautiful Mags over at, oh my gosh, I am so terrible. I'll put it in because I don't want to chop it up. And I know it, I'm just like brain fart, okay? So anyways, we got into this discussion and she was talking about her own alien experience, and she had brought up about the Anunnaki or the ancient Sumerians. So I would think that most people know about these stories by now, but I could be wrong. Maybe it just has not, maybe you don't even care to know these things. But the oldest known civilization that we have that had writing is the ancient Sumerians, which is Mesopotamia. The ancient Sumerians, there were tablets that were found and stories that were found about two half-brothers. A lot more too. I'm just trying to get as brief into this as possible. Enlil and Enki. And they were called or referred to as Anunnaki, which it is said, some people say that they were actually visitors from another planet called Nibiru, which is on a long cycle around our sun. This was actually put in a book, I believe it's called Chariot of the Gods, and it's by Rachele Ascension, where he talks about, the Anunnaki and ancient Sumerian. And The way it goes, and I'm just keeping a long story really, really brief. If there's other people out there that know these stories in more detail, share. Please, please, please share. But Anu, according to Sumerian legend, was the great father in the sky. He was the top god. He was the Lord over the gods. And he lost his position to Enlil, because Enlil had the tablet of destinies. I believe that's what it is. I don't think I wrote it down. But whoever had this particular tablet, it's supposed to be some sort of clay tablet, I believe. But, I mean, if you really look in between the lines, I would say it's probably some sort of technology. Whoever controlled this or had possession of this controlled the earth and the skies and all that. Well, Enlil was the person who had thought of creating humanity in order to create a workforce, because they were mining gold and for whatever else that they wanted. Well, his half-brother, Enki, is the one who was the engineer who actually created. The story is that I believe it was Enlil who told his mother, and then his mother relayed it to the other brother, or told one of them, and then it was relayed to Enki, and Enki then created him. Well, when they started realizing that, humans were becoming like too plenty or whatever, they just didn't want them anymore. They had talked about a great flood. Okay, which those that are Christian and know the Christian Bible, and in Genesis where it talks about the great flood and Noah's Ark and all that, they kind of correlate, because this actually comes, well, I believe that it comes from earlier stuff from the ancient Sumerians talking about the great flood. And so they were aliens. They were different gods who had, I don't think I wrote it down here, but also Anu's, who was the great god who created everything, supposedly. Well, no, he couldn't have created everything. But he was the great father in the sky. His parents were Anshar and Kishar, which, if you think about in Greek mythology, very much like the Titans, like Kronos, okay? And so I find that correlation very, very interesting. So, I don't know why I put that there. So moving on, this was roughly, I don't even know if they know exactly how old it was, because science is always reproving itself. Just like the Sphinx, they now believe is way, way older than what they had originally thought, and that they believe it was built way before the pyramids. So anyways, now we're getting on to biblical, talking about the Nephilim, which were supposedly the offspring of the giants, or offspring of fallen angels. And for those Bible thumpers, one of the things, which I was one of them, one of the things that I always found really funny is when somebody that was Christian would say, I don't believe in aliens, when what are angels? What is God? They weren't born of earth. So what are they? I would think that that's the original alien right there, right? I guess it's all in a matter of perspective. So anyways, the fallen angels found women to be agreeable, and I'm getting this from the book of Genesis and the book of Enoch, which was actually part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was not actually put into the Bible canon for whatever reasons. The powers that be at the time didn't think it was relevant, or they just didn't want that information also to be out. So, although Enoch is actually mentioned in the Bible as being somebody that was found in such grace with God that he was taken early. And in those days, they lived to be like 1,000 years old. And I think he lived, and don't quote me on this, I could be wrong, I think he lived around 600 years old, 600 years old. So, anyways, their offspring were known as the old men of fame, the giants. And when I was talking with Mags, she also said there was another myth that I've not heard about. I'll have to go back and look at the comments about another offspring of giants from something else, which I do want to look into. But the fallen angels had offspring with the women, and because they were mixing with the women, they also taught sorcery, incantations, and ways of dividing the roots in the tree. So herbalism. And I'm thinking also like divination, which also kind of correlates with tarot and witchcraft and all of that good stuff, right? So the giants in those days became, they were, according to the Bible, they were like 3 cubits tall. And I don't know exactly how big it is, but it says that, and this I believe is out of the book of Enoch, it says that they were eating so much that the people could not keep on feeding them because they didn't have enough food. So the giants turned against them and started eating all of the people. And eating the animals and eating everything and sucking the blood and just, and also for people that know in the story of David and Goliath. Even if you're not Christian, I'm sure most people have heard that story. Well, Goliath was from a line or a clan of giants. I believe they said he was like 12 feet tall or something. So then we move on to, and these are not necessarily in any kind of order, Egyptian gods. Like Ra and, is it Atum? Well, anyways, the pharaohs were considered direct offspring of the gods, thereby divine. And just like in the Game of Thrones, they would procreate and marry brothers and or sisters, right? And they kept it in the family because they did not want to muddy the bloodline, so to speak. Okay, they wanted to keep their bloodline pure. They were said to have elongated skulls. And I believe there's many other stories out there that talk about the negative RH factor as far as, the blood. I do know that there is a definite difference between, RH negative and RH positive, because if you give somebody the wrong blood type, it could be deadly. So there's something, in my opinion, that's alien about that to begin with, right? So, some that were known for having the elongated skulls, they were tall, and were Akhenaten, who was the father of King Tut or Tutankhamun, and his wife Nefertiti, who was also his sister. Well, if you go back and you also look at some of the hieroglyphics, when they talk about some of the other gods or show them, they'll show a really big image of somebody, like the pharaohs or the different gods like Horus and Ra and I don't know Isis and all that, but they're so much bigger than regular people. And I don't know if that's supposed to depict just like small children, but they don't look like children. They just look like regular adults. And then you have one that's really big, right? So, and the elongated skulls, I've watched many a program. They're they're being found all over the place. And, you know, there are tribes that also, and I don't have their names right now, but tribes that have also, for a very, very long time, wrapped their babies' heads in order to emanate who was like royalty or their gods, the people that they worshipped. So they would try to emanate them by forcing the child's head to become elongated. But there's also science that is showing that some of the skulls that they have found that were elongated skulls are not wrapped. There's nothing to indicate that they were wrapped. That's just the way that they were. So then we move on to other, like Native American, like the Hopi Indians. They believe that their ancestors actually came from the Pleiades. And it was a place or a people that they call Chahukan. And if I mispronounce that, and you know these legends, or you are of Hopi descent, please let me know. This stuff interests me big time. And then there's Lakota legends that speak of mysterious beings that came from above in a sphere, a light sphere, and would abduct like their children. And they would call these people star beings or star people. Yeah. Also, there is somebody that I seen and heard some of his stuff through, what was it? Disclosure. I don't remember the name of it. It was like a conference. It was last year. I had purchased a ticket where I could watch it all online. But his name is Clifford Mahudi, and he is a Zuni elder. And he also talks about how his grandfathers passed on information to him, taught him information about how there's a direct link between him and the star people or the beings from space. Then we go on to the Mayans, and they had a feathered serpent god, and I know I'm gonna cut this up. Kukumats, I think, was the name of the god, and it is said that he created everything, or he created humanity with another god called Tepu. I think that's right. And then that kind of correlates with the Aztecs. The Aztecs had a similar creator god who was also a feathered serpent type being who was Ahacatl? Quetzalcoatl? I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm just chopping these up. So I find that that's very similar. I also find it strange that all of these different civilizations and cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other because they were primitive, right? And they were on different continents, yada, yada, yada. You get where I'm going with this. That they had the same things, a lot of the same origin stories. How can that be? Unless they were far more advanced than what history tells us, which I believe that's the case, but also that they were being visited by what they would consider gods, star people, or aliens. So then we go to like Germany and the Nazi Party, and they were huge into the occult, and they actually had a society called the Real Society, which was a group of mediums, I believe, or channelers that were supposedly channeling with extraterrestrials. And the German Party, or members of the German Party, Nazi Party, had actually had some sort of agreement. And this is, I'll get to more of this. I know this is getting long, I'm sorry, but it's just a huge, and I'm only just barely touching on some of these, and I'm not even hitting on some of the other stuff that I've read. It's probably why I don't remember stuff, because there's so much stuff going around in there, it gets jumbled sometimes. but they were in contact with extraterrestrials, and those extraterrestrials were giving them technology information. And there was also, which I'm sure you can find, like they were working with creating spaceships and time machines, like in a bell, and I don't remember the exact name of it. So now we get into more recent times, and then the Ancient Aliens came out, the TV series, which I believe it's on like the 10th season. Oh my gosh. I watched it from the very beginning. I found it so enthralling. But I always believed, like I said, from the time I was little, in aliens. I don't know why. So anyways, we get onto that show. And then, so 10 seasons of major in-depth detail about visiting different cultures and the stuff that they left behind and the oral stories that they passed down from generation to generation about sky people and things that were, you know, carried on. So then a couple of years ago, I started watching a show called Cosmic Disclosure with David Wilcock. And he had special people on there like Corey Goode and Emery Smith and others as well. Dr. Michael Sala and Michael Salinger, is that his name? I'm not 100% sure. But the correlations with stories was amazing. Corey Goode is a insider, a government insider, who came forward with these stories about being in contact with aliens, and that the government has been in contact with aliens, as so have other civilizations, or I mean countries and stuff, for many years. Okay, and then he had said that he served in a secret space program, and he did like a 20 and back, which I just only briefly want to touch on this. If you really want to hear the story, the amazing story, and it is crazy, okay? Crazy. But it's called Cosmic Disclosure, and it's on the Gaia channel. Now, David no longer does that, nor does Corey Goode, I don't believe. But Emery Smith is still on there, to the best of my knowledge, and he's also another insider from government and military. And he actually is a doctor who would work on genetic stuff. So he said it started off little, where he was getting just small little samples, and then as time progressed, he worked in like an underground facility, a very high clearance underground facility. And then it would come in where it would be parts of bodies. And then it eventually came up to whole bodies. And he talks about all of the different aliens that they're not just off in space. They've been among us for a long time. From the beginning. And Corey also talks about inner Earth civilizations and his contact with that, and actually going and visiting some of these places. And they talk about ascension and just an alliance that's going on right now, a battle that is going on, that's being waged. I think that's really about it. Oh, and then other things, you know, like Mars, finding like pyramids and faces on Mars. And in the oceans, now they're starting to discover that they believe that some of the actual marine life that is in the oceans is actually alien. That it, like maybe an asteroid that was carrying, you know, water and the building blocks that crashed into our oceans created life. But they were not, it was not life that was started here. So, and there's legends also in other civilizations talking about gods that are half man and half fish. So, then you're talking about mermaids, right? But it's all a perception. It's all about how you look at it. So I hope this has been interesting, to say the least, a little bit entertaining. And I hope that it has spurred you on, if you don't already have, or have not looked into, aliens and what you think about aliens. And if anything, if you have, and you have more knowledge, and I have only touched on just a little bit. There is so much information out there. It's crazy. Let me just touch on one other thing. Alien abductions. How many people for a long time, and even like in the Indian Bahara, I don't even know, I can't remember it's a book, okay? I don't remember the Mahatra or something like that. You probably know, and you're probably saying it right now, right? But they even talk about Vimanas and, actually seeing battles taking place in the sky. Some look like flying saucers, some look like cigar shaped, and they're fighting, and it's like a huge thing that's being seen in the sky. There was also incidences like over the White House, like now. I don't know if you've seen anything about Antarctica and what's happening in Antarctica, and what people, a good book on that is Michael Sala's book. It's Antarctica something, I can't remember offhand, but you can also find information about him online. And there's another show, another YouTube channel that I watch called On the Edge, or no, The Edge of Wonder. There you go. And they interview a lot of these people. Corey Good, David Wilcock, I'm not sure about Emery Smith. And David Wilcock also has another series on Gaia that is like ancient. You know me and my memory. I don't remember the name of the series, but he has talked all along about spiritual things and different things that have been discovered over the years, and different new sciences that have come out. Like, for instance, talking about different dimensions and different vibrations and sacred geometry and a plethora of information. So I highly suggest looking into that if it interests you. But yeah, tell me your stories. I want to hear it. Do a VR to this if you think I'm friggin' crazy. Tell me why. I'll tell you. My own personal belief is, and this is not meant to offend anybody whatsoever in their beliefs, I just think from my own perspective that it's naive to not believe in the possibility of life outside of the earth. Just because, look at how many planets are being discovered all the time now that are what are considered in the Goldilocks zone, where that means they can create life, at least the life that we know. The same kind of building blocks that we have here on Earth, but that doesn't mean that all life form need those kind of building blocks. So I just think it's interesting, and it's it's just really interesting. And I love to hear other people's stories. If you've had actual personal, I have personally seen stuff in the sky. Now, I'm not saying it was a UFO, to me, it was unidentified. I don't know. And it seemed like it was different, where it was moving across the sky, right? But as far as me personally, ever remembering being abducted or anything like that, another story that I would watch is The Fourth Kind. And that's about a bunch of incidences that happened in Alaska, one of the towns in Alaska. And through hypnosis and all that stuff came up about, aliens. And even one of the voices that was recorded was like ancient Sumerian language, which I find very amazing. So anyways, I hope this has sparked a little bit of interest in you. Please do a VR or comment down below. Even if you think it's crazy and you want to just tell me why you think it's crazy. That's okay. As long as it's respectful, that's okay. So thank you guys for listening to my rambles. Sending you guys all love and light.